You're live, Your Worship.
Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. Good afternoon, Council. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of October 24th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. So I want to make that motion for me, Councillor Cherry, Councillor Staples. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Adoption in the minutes of the regular council meeting of October 10th. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Lusav, Councillor Orlando, all in favor? Motion's carried. And the adoption of the minutes of the special council meeting of October 12th. Councillor Devlin, Councillor Staples, all in favor? Motion carried. Any business arising from the regular council minutes of October 10th? Seeing none. Any business arising from special council minutes of October 12th? Seeing none, we're going to go right on into our development permit DP 2023-007 and 009. Do we have a presentation, Mr. Sun?
Yes, Your Worship and all of council. If council would like to see a presentation, then staff can certainly give a brief one. I know you have a busy agenda today.
Do a brief one, yes, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Council. Today we will be presenting a development permit and development variance permit application for the Revelstoke Cabot Golf Course Clubhouse as well as residences. This includes 6 multi-unit residential buildings, a clubhouse, and a request to vary the minimum parking requirements as specified in their comprehensive development zone. Give a little bit of a background, get into the proposal overview, and then conclude with the policy direction, staff evaluation, and ultimate recommendation that is in your package today. So the subject property is Zone Comprehensive Development Zone 8. It's set up to be developed for resort purposes in accordance with that zone, as well as the master development agreement between the resort owner and the province. It falls within the resort neighborhood and the Revelstoke Mountain Resort Development Permit area. Within that development permit area, it is both for form and character, protection of development from hazardous conditions for things like steep slopes, as well as protection of the natural environment. The proposed development site area you can see on the map here, and I apologize it is a little bit zoomed out, but we are talking about the resort lands where it is quite a large area of lands that we are talking about. So it's just to the north of the Heli Hotel that's under construction and to the northwest of the existing Sutton Place along Camosi Road to the west of Camosi Road. So again, the proposal is for 6 multi-unit residential buildings that will be considered golf course residential development. This will include 79 primary residential units with 48 lock-off suites. It's important to note that under our zoning bylaw definitions, those 48 lock-off suites aren't considered separate dwelling units because they're just bedrooms. They don't have a kitchen. They don't have all the facilities that would constitute a dwelling unit. So that's important when we're considering things like parking requirements. So you can think of it almost as an additional 1 or 2 bedrooms that would be separated from the primary dwelling unit. The proposal also includes the construction of the golf course clubhouse, which you can see is at the far west end of the development and would be immediately adjacent to the 18th hole here. The request to vary parking from the required 152 parking stalls to 109. This includes 20 surface parking stalls that would be located, you can see here in green, adjacent to Camosi Road, as well as 89 underground stalls for the golf course residences. The development will also utilize shared parking at the resort. And with this development, during the busy golfing season, that's when the shared parking would be realized when the resort isn't as busy as well. So this is all intended to be developed this way under the master development agreement with the province. As part of the proposal, enhanced landscaping, pedestrian connections, and mitigated buffers adjacent to Locks Creek are proposed for the development. So you can see on the far north end of the development, Locks Creek does run through it. The proponent has gone through the riparian area approval process and has identified the relevant setback from the stream. And they have agreed to enhance landscaping measures along that portion of the creek to make sure that it is going to be protected as future development does take place. The proposed development will take place across 6 different phases, and the proponent not only has developed a comprehensive landscaping plan, they've put together a landscape framework that's included in your package that ultimately identifies how this development can be pursued that provides an effective gateway as people are coming in from Camosi Road, which will ultimately be realigned through the golf course to this big development that will be a high quality, attractive development that is kind of that gateway feature coming into the resort. The development will integrate into the overall multi-use pathway system. So the Valley Trail that Mr. Black and his team have been working closely with the resort on, this will integrate into that and it will be a publicly accessible pathway system. The golf course residences and clubhouse will be constructed of similar design and compatible materials, complementing existing resort development. Light gray anchored stone veneer, composite wood tone siding, that would be both horizontal and vertical, composite wood tone fascia, as well as black aluminum siding and facade for the residences. For the clubhouse, very similar materials, except it would be cedar wood siding that's horizontal and vertical. They can't use the cedar wood siding for the residences due to fire code requirements. And then it would all be standing seam metal roofing. And this is all developed in accordance with the Class A fire resistant materials that are required through zoning. So staff have evaluated the application against the applicable development permit area guidelines as contained within the zoning bylaw as well as the OCP. And in addition, the proponent has submitted necessary environmental assessment reports, riparian area assessment reports, geotechnical analysis, and these have all been included in recommended conditions of approval for council to consider today. And with that, this is the staff recommendation. I do apologize, it is lengthy. We have long legal descriptions out on some of these resort lands. So certainly everything as recommended in here does comply with the official community plan, zoning bylaw guidelines, and staff recommend issuance of all the permits. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Simon. All right, council, can we get someone to put 5A1 on for me? Councilor Cherry, you want to do that?
No, thanks.
Councilor Dill.
Move that development variance permit be issued for the following variances to zoning bylaw number 2299. A, section 11A.8.9 of zoning bylaw 2299. 1, to reduce the minimum number of parking spaces from 502 to 152 to 502 from
152.
152 to
109, please.
109. Oh, okay. And I will move that instead.
Okay. Do I have a second for the motion? We read this correctly. You seem to shorten it up really well. So- Okay, second for the motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any discussion on that? So basically, reducing the parking. Seeing none, no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2. Councilor Devlin.
I move that a development permit be issued for form and character and development within an environmentally hazardous and environmentally sensitive area for the construction of 6 multi-unit residential buildings located at 3124/2875/3122/3075 Cambosi Road. That's all I want.
Okay, second for that motion, please. Councilor Luceno. Any discussion on that motion? Looking at form and character, Councilor Luceno.
Thanks. Mayor Schultz, just a question, is this causing a shift in density from the development, or is this all within the zone 1?
Through your worship, Councilor Lucio, this would all be within zone 1, so no shift in density. And the proponent is still well under the permitted density within zone 1.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Item number 3, Councilor Devlin.
Move that development permit be issued for form and character and development within an environmentally hazardous, environmentally sensitive area for the construction of a golf course clubhouse located at 3124/2875/3122/3075 Cambosi Road.
Second for that motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any comments on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 4. Thank you, Councilor Devlin.
I move that the owner provide security for the due and proper completion of landscaping in the amount of 125% of the amount identified in a cost estimate, the City of Revelstoke in the form of cash or unconditional, irrevocable, auto-renewing letter of credit issued by a Canadian chartered bank or credit union prior to issuance of the building permit associated with DP 2023-007 for the construction of 6 multi-unit residential buildings security shall be provided in full upon issuance of the first building permit associated with DP 2023-007.
Seconder for the motion, please. Council Lucero. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number 5, thank you.
I will
Council.
move that the owner provide security for the due and proper completion of landscaping in the amount of 125% of the amount identified in a cost estimate to the city of Revelstoke in the form of cash or an unconditional irrevocable auto-renewing letter of credit issued by a Canadian chartered bank or credit union prior to the issuance of a building permit associated with DP 2023-009 for the construction of a golf course clubhouse.
Seconder for the motion, please. Council Lucero. Any discussion on that motion? Council Chair, you have a comment? No, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. So all those courses for speed reading and an auctioneer have paid off, Councilor Devil. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not done yet, I'm sure.
You're probably right. All right, we're going to move on to item 5B. Do we have a small presentation with that one, Mr. Simon, or how do you want to approach that?
To your worship, I do believe Ms. Hartling has a presentation. We have presentations for the variances today, but not for the standard development permits.
Okay, perfect, good. All right, Ms. Hartling, do you have something you'd like to share with us regarding this?
I do. I have a short presentation here for the variance. I'll just pull it up on my screen.
Thank you.
Just before I begin, Your Worship, can you see the presentation for the variance in front of you?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you. So council has a development variance permit in front of them today. This is DVP 2022-013, and the subject property is located at 703 Center Street. So I'll just quickly go over the background, property information, proposal overview, staff evaluation, and then wrap up with staff recommendation before council's discussion. So the subject property, it contains a 2-family dwelling. It's serviced by community services and access from the Center Street cul-de-sac. The property is zoned special low density residential zone, and it's located within the South Revelstoke neighborhood. You can see on the screen the subject property highlighted in yellow, the portion of the existing building strata, and the proposal is to subdivide off part of that yellow portion. And I'll get into that into a second. So surrounding the property, there's a multifamily building strata just to the east. You can see at the end of Center Street. There's 2 R1A zone single family dwelling properties to the south across Center Street. And then the remaining properties surrounding the subject property are R2A zone, and they're developed with a mix of single family and 2-family homes. So the proposal is requesting to reduce the permitted lot size in the R2A zone. The restriction is 500 square meters. They're proposing to reduce this lot dimension to 434 square meters. And then also a reduction to the rear yard minimum lot width. This is 15 meters to 14.18 meters. And this is to allow for a subdivision to create an additional lot for infill. And the subject property owner has a proposal for a single family dwelling with secondary suite on this lot. So the proposed remainder lot you can see in the image there, it contains the 2-family dwelling duplex. So you have building strata lot 2, building strata lot 1, and then they have their yard areas. This is all building strata, not a bare land strata. And so the only impact would be to building strata lot 2 and not lot 1 with the proposed subdivision. And you see proposed lot A next to building strata lot 2 for the rear yard request, and then the lot area. There's no variance request to the front yard. That is over 15 meters. The proposed lot area of 434 square meters with the required 40% parcel coverage in the R2A zone would equate to a maximum building area of 173.6 square meters. And this is not including the setback requirements and parking that all must be met. To meet all zoning bylaw requirements, the applicant is proposing to construct a single family dwelling with suite with approximate building area of 111 square meters to fit on that lot size. So staff have evaluated the proposal against applicable zoning bylaws, other city bylaws and policies, OCP. Staff support the requested variance for the following reasons. Minimum lot dimension requirements, they help ensure that a property can support the intended uses as prescribed for in the specific zone. And they also, for the minimum lot width, they provide in part to ensure sufficient access to that lot. So the proposed reduction in minimum lot size will not have any impact on the subject property's ability to contain a principal dwelling. It might have to be a slightly smaller than some other properties, but it has no, it has the ability to contain a principal dwelling with the allotted R2A zones, parcel coverage, setbacks, parking. The property contains sufficient access at the front yard, and the minor reduction of lot width located at the rear yard is not anticipated to have any impact on the neighboring property abutting the property or the use of the subject property. The variance proposals for requests for lot area and width reductions only. So as mentioned, the existing building proposed lot must meet all other zoning bylaw provisions, and this is prior to subdivision approval. Not going to get into all the subdivision conditions, but they do have to be proven out before there's any subdivision approval for parcel coverage, setbacks, projections, as well as all servicing requirements must be satisfied prior to subdivision application approval, and that's outlined in the staff report as well. And staff are currently engaged in the zoning bylaw rewrite. And this is a process where we are re-examining all the residential zones and minimum lot area and width. And there is consideration to reductions in these two lot sizes in the low density residential zones. Let's go back. So staff have received and notified property owners within 100 meters. So 52 properties were captured in the 100-meter landowner notification area. Staff received 6 public submissions before council. There's 3 in support of the requested variance, and this is supporting to convert the unused area of land into a residential lot to create infill housing. These are from neighboring properties. And then there's 3 not in support, primarily due to noted existing parking congestion, snow removal, and drainage issues in the area. Staff will note that these are issues and responsibilities of the city to enforce, and applicants are to meet these at subdivision application and building permit. And this would not be subject or applicable to the requested variance in front of council and are items that are addressed at a later stage in different applications. Just to go over, there are 2 requested variances. The application is proposing to reduce the lot area from 500 square meters to 434 square meters, and rear yard minimum lot width from 15 to 14.18 meters. And staff are in support of the proposed size of the lot and infill housing that's supported by the OCP and the low density residential land use policies at the property. And the staff recommendation is up on the screen for council's consideration today. And for council's info, sorry, the applicant is also in attendance if they have any questions for them.
Great. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you again. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me and we can discuss this. Councilor Devlin.
Just make sure I come to that. I move that development variance permit be issued at 703 Center Street for the following variances to zoning bylaw number 2299A, section 6.3.3, lot dimensions. 1, to reduce the minimum lot area from 500 square meters to 434 square meters for proposed lot A, and 2, to reduce the minimum rear yard lot width from 15 meters to 14.18 meters for proposed lot A.
Thank you. Second for that motion, please. Councilor Stapenhurst. Any discussion on the motion? Any questions? Councilor Stapenhurst.
Just a question. I know that the DVP is for a single family with a duplex or with a basement suite, and I'm just wondering why we're not considering just a single family, as that would seem to be more applicable for a lot of that size.
Comments, Ms. Hartland?
Yeah, through your worship, as an example of what the property owner is proposing. At building permit, they do have to prove out the parking spots for the additional suite. So that would be something at building permit that they would have to prove out unless they require a variance. It would come back to council. That's not their proposal. They're proposing to meet all zoning bylaw requirements. And yeah, a duplex wouldn't be permitted with suites on this lot as it would not meet the minimum party wall subdivision. So it would be, if this was subdivided, it would be eligible for a single family dwelling with an accessory dwelling unit. And or a duplex, but no suites.
Answer your question, Council.
I think so, yes.
Councilor Orlando.
Your worship, thank you. Through the chair, I just have a question of staff regarding comments related to the parking issues. I believe the comment was generally that that's something that's addressed at a later stage and not at this stage. I have received complaints for a long time from that sort of pocket neighborhood just outside of the Center Street development itself with issues with parking, specifically that because the snow comes off the roof in the development and people use their carports for storage, that there's a lot of cars out there. The snow removal is an issue. There's cars in front of the fire hydrants, so fire and safety and access issues, and that's reflected in some of the letters there. I was wondering if I could ask a favor and go back to the presentation to, I think it was slide number 2, where there's an aerial view of the neighborhood, and I'm wondering how is it supposed to work there, and if I could just get some clarity, because people have expressed concerns, but I often don't really know what where people are meant to park and what is meant to be happening there. And then if I'm correct in that observation of staff comments, like when would these issues be dealt with is my question through the chair. Thank you.
Right, Ms. Hartley.
Yeah, through the chair, I'll just bring up the attachment that has 2 aerial photos. They're different years. Just one moment here. Can you see the PDF attachment with the 2 ortho photos in front of you?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, the ortho photo in the staff presentation, we do have different years. We did just get new ortho photos for 2023. So 2019, you'll see in the ortho photo with Strata Lot 2, there are cars parked there, and then there was signs placed. I'm not going to get too into it because it is another issue with bylaw enforcement and parking issues of the city. But there are new signs that were put for parallel parking. And with the subdivision application, there actually is a requirement for no parking signage around this area and the cul-de-sac to be built out. So there will be improvements to this area. But that is addressed under the subdivision application that the approving officer reviews in relation to the subdivision servicing development bylaw. And then with building permits, we review it with the zoning bylaw. Again, there's zoning checks at every stage. And then for parking, and that they're meeting their parking. If people are parking in no parking areas, then that becomes a bylaw enforcement issue for the city to enforce.
Follow-up, Councilor.
Your worship, thank you. Yeah, so just for clarification, that is a cul-de-sac there. You sort of see the circle line there, and nobody is meant to be parking anywhere in that where that circle is right now. Is that correct?
Ms. Hartley.
Through your worship, there is a no parking sign by the fire hydrant, and then there is a sign for parallel parking only that will be updated for an improved situation. That is not at this stage of the variance, though.
Okay.
Eventually, it will be no parking.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Stegenhurst.
I was just wondering, yeah, through the chair, I was just wondering if bylaw had been consulted in regards to how much of a problem has been documented in this area with the hydrant and the parking.
I think, so Ms. Hartling, correct me if I'm wrong, but having this permit go through will probably alleviate the issues with the parking and the parking hydrant and whatnot because of the placement on the property. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct. We have received complaints on parking. However, that is separate from what the application is in front of us today for if the lot's feasible to contain a dwelling unit, and it does have to prove out its own on-site parking. But that will be alleviated with the subdivision application for the requirements, as there'll be an access to that property with a driveway and formalizing that cul-de-sac. So that will be an improved situation at the end of that cul-de-sac. With the updated yard turning into a lot.
Great, all right. And Councillor Staples, do you have a follow-up?
I do have a follow-up question, more pertaining to the report that we received, or the correspondence we received from one of the neighboring properties in regards to the lack of drainage in the area. And I was just wondering if engineering had any update on that.
Comment on that, Ms. Hartling, regarding drainage and how that pertains to the motion ahead of us.
Through your worship, to Councillor Stapenhurst, the drainage will for the subject property would be proved out at subdivision stage. That's a standard subdivision condition of subdivision servicing bylaw that they are to keep drainage on their lot. If there are drainage complaints or issues on the city infrastructure, then that would be complaint based for the city to look into. All of the properties within the end of this cul-de-sac have received their permits. So if there are issues within the neighborhood, it would be something to look at as an overall potential issue. But to staff's knowledge that everything's been approved by permitting, and this property would have to alleviate any drainage or impacts to city infrastructure with an approved drainage plan.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm not sure if Mr. Black has any additional comments, but yeah,
No,
that's
he's
addressed.
quite content with your explanation. Thank you. All right. I'm definitely supportive of this. It's nice to see an infill on this piece of property. I think that's going to alleviate a lot of the concerns for the community members there. But it's great to see more housing. So I'm definitely supportive. Councillor Lando, you have comment before I call a question.
Sure. Yeah, Your Worship. I won't be in support, just due to I'm all in support of more density and infill housing. But when for years, residents there have raised concerns and issues about the problems arising from the density in the neighborhood, namely several issues discussed before. It becomes a challenge for me to have confidence that we're going to make the infill in this particular case work for the community. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comment. Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to say that I'm in support of this subdivision, but I do want to make a note though. It looks like this was the plan all along with the design of the first building at 705 and 703. I'd like to see our applicants that are coming before us, with a bit more thought out planning and honesty. So we don't have to do this again in 5 years with any of their other projects.
All right. Appreciate the comment. Any other comments before I call a question? Saying none, all those in favor? Opposed? Note Councillor Stapenhurst, Councillor Orlando opposed, balance of council in favor. This motion has passed. Moving on to item 5C, development permit 2022-024. Do we have a bit of a presentation for that, Ms. Hartman?
Yes, Your Worship. It's a combined application of a variance and a development permit. So I do have a presentation for both applications. I'll just share my screen.
So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we have two subject applications in front of council today. A DBP is 2023-005 and DP 2022-024. And this is to vary the minimum parking requirements and construction of 4 residential stacked row house buildings, parking and landscaping. So like the other presentation, I'll go through the subject property background, proposal review, staff evaluation, and staff recommendation. The subject property is currently vacant. It's approximately 8,900 square meters. You can see a picture of it in the council package. There's a few site photos, and just on the screen ahead of you, in front of you, there is a picture of the property coming down Bend Road. It's zone comprehensive development zone CD09. Multifamily residential development permit area is what we're looking at for the development permit today. And it's located within the highway corridor neighborhood and surrounded by predominantly other commercial, retail, commercial accommodation uses. And that's to the west, northeast, and then the railway to the south there. You can see the subject property. Its address is 1740 Bend Road. The development is for 4 stacked row house buildings to be used as long-term rentals, and some of the buildings to be used for staff housing for the Base Camp Resorts development. The applicant is requesting approval for the following variances. So this is to reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces for the proposed 75 stacked row house dwelling units with accessible parking and visitor parking. This would total 165 parking spaces required. It would be 150 residential spaces and 15 visitor parking spaces. And they're requesting to vary this to a total of 87 parking spaces, which would equate to 1 stall per unit instead of the 2 stalls per unit for row housing. And then 12 visitor parking spaces instead of the 15. There's also a reduction request for providing the mobility access parking spaces. And this is from a maximum of 8 spaces to a maximum of 4 spaces. So you'll just see on the screen in front of you, there's 2 accesses off of Bend Road with the parking surrounding each building. There's 2 accessible parking spaces by building 4 and 2 by building 2. There's a mixture of 15 units building 4, 23 units building 3, 20 units in building 1, and 17 units in building 2. There's bike storage, a large storage unit next to building 2. And then for the bike racks, there's 18 bike racks next to all the different buildings. So when looking at the development permit, we're looking at form and character, site design, landscaping. So the parking is, they've proposed 87 paved parking spaces, 12 visitor spaces. Within this parking allotment, there's 4 accessible spaces and 2 EV charging spaces. There is common amenity areas that are highlighted on the image there with some areas for the residents to hang out, have barbecues, picnic tables, fire pit seating. There's enclosed waste and recycling and a storage area at the middle of the property. There's landscaping throughout the entire property around the perimeter and between the buildings. The property is proposed to be fenced with aluminum fencing around the site. There's concrete and stone pedestrian connectivity provided throughout the site onto Bend Road. So with the development permit and variance request, the applicant has agreed to constructing a sidewalk from this development up the entirety of Bend Road up to the junction where the sidewalk is next to the Ramada on Bend Road, which would connect this development to the nearest transit stop. And all lighting in the development must be dark sky compliant. So the proposed buildings, they have 75 units, 3 stories with a mixture of small studio units, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and there's some larger 3-bedroom units. Ground floor units have a private patio. Upper floors have a semi-private exterior walkway. You can see in the renderings to the side there. The exterior siding chosen is gray, and then a blue-gray cement board panel, a horizontal siding, and board and batten wood timber details you can see in the below image there, and light gray-brown stone veneer along the base of the building. The trim, the railings, they're dark gray or black cement board, asphalt shingles for the roof in black, and then there's a brown wood grain soffit and screen walls between the units. For the staff evaluation of the 2 applications, Staff are supportive of the variances requested to the reduction of parking spaces. The proposed reduction is not anticipated to generate a significant impact on adjacent operations. And staff have worked with the applicant to secure a sidewalk connecting the existing sidewalk from the northern access by the Ramada there of Ben Road down to the subject property. So that does connect the pedestrians to the closest transit stop. Many of the units are 1-bedroom or studio units that would require no more than 1 parking space. And as the city is working towards a pedestrian bicycle oriented friendly city, staff are currently engaged in zoning bylaw rewrite process that would be looking at all of the parking regulations for each allotted uses and what is consistent with our transportation master plan as well. Staff are supportive of the development permit proposal as the development does respond and comply with the multifamily development permit area guidelines. And then the OCP for site plan considerations, their off-street parking location, and then the building form and character. The staff recommendation is up on the slide for the development variance permit for the support of the reduction in parking, for the development permit to be issued, and that the owner provide security for all of the landscaping at 105% of the landscape estimate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartling. All right, council, someone want to put the motion on the table for me for item C1? Councilor Devlin.
A as well, right? I move that development variance permit be issued, for the following variances to the zoning bylaw number 2299A, section 13.2, required off-street parking. 1, to reduce the minimum required parking spaces for a stacked row house dwelling unit from 2 per dwelling unit to 1 per dwelling unit with a total of 75 parking spaces for the proposed 75 stacked row house dwelling units. And 2, to reduce the minimum required residential visitor parking spaces from 1 visitor space per 5 stacked row house dwelling units to 1 visitor space per 6.5 stacked row house dwelling units for a total of 12 spaces for the proposed 75 stacked row house dwelling.
Item B.
Nope. Okay. Yes, second B, section 13.6, development and maintenance standards. 1, to reduce the requirement of providing mobility challenge accessible parking spaces from 1 space for every 10 spaces to a maximum of 8 spaces to 1 space for every 10 spaces to a maximum of 4 spaces.
Great, thank you, Councilor. Seconder for that motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, Richard. I have a number of questions about this this project. It's not quite, it's not just about the parking, but more about the development in its entirety.
Okay, and that's a question, but it's probably not pertinent to the motion on the table, but go ahead and ask. Where is it?
It'll get there.
Okay.
Give me a second. Thanks, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, the staff, under the current, is it CD9 zoning? What uses are available?
Ms. Hartman?
Through Your Worship, I can just bring up the zone right now. There are a variety of zones that are permitted. However, the applicant has, I'm not sure if this is what your question is, to secure the housing as stacked row housing for long-term rentals only, and it'll be rental units for the entire complex, and working with staff on a voluntary covenant. It is not required as part of this application, but they are working on this with CMHC, and we'll be securing this with them for a minimum of 10 years, and staff are looking at securing this covenant with them. And this might be coming back to council with a housing agreement, but that is something that's not required with the request here. I can bring up the zone just one moment.
Thanks, Ms. Hartling. I think you've alluded to what I was going to ask next. This was presented to Your Worship. This was presented to the APC as a hotel development. And I was going to ask what checks and balances there are in place to ensure that the use will stay as a staff housing, not just us voting on parking regulations and then changing the use at a later date. But it sounds like staff are diligent to make sure all the checks and balances are in place. So I'm happy with this.
All right, follow-up question? You okay? That's it? Mr. Perlman?
Yeah, I just want to weigh in, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with Council Cherry's assessment of this. It's concerning that the ACP dealt with this as a hotel development. And yet here tonight, we're dealing with it as a staff accommodation, staff housing development. I also was approached by the owner on the DCC issue. On what are DCCs, and is it DCC for a hotel, is it DCC for staff accommodation? I didn't have a clear answer. I guess my question is to Mr. Simon, can you provide some feedback on that, just some clarity, so I better understand it? Thank you.
Yep, to all of council, really important to understand, the zoning is the zoning. It is zone comprehensive development zone 9. It has a variety of uses that are permitted within that zone, so council is not debating today what use this should fall under and what use should be permitted. The uses are already permitted within that zone. That discussion has already been had by previous councils who gave the property the existing zoning designation. Now, this zone allows for everything under the zone. It allows for short-term rental, hotels, tourist accommodation, as well as long-term rental, apartment buildings, townhouses, everything under the sun. When this was presented to APC, it was presented as a forming character development permit. So APC is looking at the design exterior of the buildings in accordance with applicable development permit area guidelines. They're not considering necessarily the use. If the use changes, they need to comply with the applicable conditions of use within the zoning bylaw, i.e. parking, other requirements like landscaping that may be applicable. Staff have been working with the proponent to secure, and the key word here is voluntary, a voluntary housing agreement. The time that you ask for a housing agreement, because it is an amenity that a developer is providing, is as part of a rezoning process. The city cannot obligate the developer to enter into an amenity contribution agreement, which would be a housing agreement, if they do not want to. Luckily, in this case, the developer is willing to work with staff. They have secured CMHC financing, which require these to be rental housing for a minimum of 10 years. And staff are planning to work with the proponent to bring a housing agreement bylaw forward to ensure that the use of this building, or of these buildings rather, for long-term rental for employee accommodation is maintained. If staff were bringing forward this zone today, we would not be recommending all these conflicting uses within the zone. We are working with what we have. We will try to be cleaning this up as much as we can with the zoning bylaw rewrite. And there's a lot of technical factors that we're going to be evaluating, not least of which is the recent announcement from the province on the short-term rental regulations, which can have an impact for developments for all these here listed. So not to go down that rabbit hole right now, but it is a bigger, complicated discussion. And what's before council today is a development permit for forming character. And again, staff are working with the proponent to secure a voluntary housing agreement to ensure that the use of these is maintained as employee accommodation.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Councilor Stepheners, did you have a question before I go to Councilor Cherry?
Councilor Chair can go ahead.
Okay, sir.
Thanks, Worship. Just for clarification, if we were to support this parking requirement change under the current use of 75 stacked row dwelling units, and they were to change the use at a later date, would this parking requirement that we're voting on right now change, or would that be insist? Because just want to say I'm in favor with the reduction in parking under the use that's being shown to us. If it was a hotel, I would not be in favor of the reduction in parking.
Okay. Comment, Ms. Hartling, excuse me.
Yeah, through your worship, if they were to change this, it would have to meet the parking requirements for a hotel, which is 1 per unit. Row housing is stricter with 2 per unit. They would also have to meet loading cell requirements. So they'd have to prove that out. So there are other requirements for parking with commercial that would have to be proven out. If it's not met, then a variance would have to come forward to council for that change in use in parking if they're not able to meet it.
That's your question, Councilor?
That's my answer.
All right. Councilor Staples, come back to you, then Councilor Devlin.
Thank you. I just wanted to I know I was present at the APC meeting when this was presented initially, and I know there was some concern regarding pedestrian safety crossing the train tracks. And I know there was something in here where CP was consulted in regards to safety measures that were taken or consulted with. And I'm just wondering what those measures were.
Yeah, through your worship, there's a guidelines document that CP provides staff to give to the applicant for considerations for development near the tracks. There is a variety of items in there. It's just been provided to the applicant for consideration as it's not a legal requirement, but it's in their best interest to follow it.
That's your question?
It does, and yeah.
Okay. Councillor Devlin.
Through the chair to Ms. Hartley, do we have a rough or exact would be better idea of how many beds these 75 dwelling units would take altogether? Because we were looking at parking for 75 units, but if it's closer to, say, 150 beds, then that might change my opinion on things.
Ms. Hartley.
Through your worship, I don't have the exact amount per building. There are a mixture. One building is almost entirely bachelor suites, where one building is a mixture of 2-bedroom and then top floor 3-bedroom. So if you want, if there's further discussion, I can go through the plans to get a better idea of beds. Just as a staff comment, these are one owner owned, so they are operated similar to a strata. It's not a strata, but one owner, but that would be authorizing parking spaces for those units being rented. But I can go through those plans if that's something that council would like me to do.
I believe Mr. Simon has his hand up.
Sorry, Mr. Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, to your worship, through your worship, Councillor Devlin, just to say, Ms. Hartling, able to present, answer questions, and sit through your drawings at the same time. There are 16 studio, 17 1-bed, 19 2-bed, and 23 3-bed. So about 30% are 3-bed, 25% are 2-bed, 22% are 1-bed, and 21% are studio. So this is what staff would anticipate to be in line with employee housing and certainly justify a warranted reduction in parking.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Lucia.
Thank you, Mayor Schultz. Yeah, I'm in support of reducing the parking requirements for the row houses. I'm not in support of reducing the mobility parking spaces. I understand trying to fit everything into this property location. And if this is looking to be used for long-term rentals for employees or trying to promote active transportation, I would look to have more bike racks as well as chargers for electric bicycles, as we see more of those bikes here in town. And I think if we're reducing parking requirements, expecting people to not have vehicles, it would be advantageous for the developer to consider that around where they're putting their bike storage.
Okay, that's a comment. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just want to express my support for Councillor Lucio's comments regarding accessibility parking. I think that's key. And just for clarity, the housing units, this agreement that's in question here, to confirm my understanding, if that use were to change, not the hotel use, but the proposed housing use, then that would mean going back to the drawing board on the issue of parking spaces. So I'm just seeking confirmation on that. And also, secondly, regarding tenancy under the yet to be outlined housing agreement, if I could have a bit more explanation. As staff mentioned, it's a strata type development. So does this mean it's sort of essentially run as staff housing with designated rooms, or do individual tenants get sort of a tenancy there?
Through your worship, through your worship to Councillor Orlando, it's not a strata development. It's one owner owned. All buildings are owned by one owner. So it would be a rental unit building only. So long-term rentals. Just similar to any it's similar to, it's not a 10-year rental only zone, but that's what it's being designed as in the model of the owner to get the CMHC housing funding.
Mm-hmm.
Follow up, Councillor.
Your Worship, yeah, just thank you, and I appreciate that through the chair. Just to follow up, so when they are rented, the owner and the tenant enter into a tenancy agreement, and that is not dependent on their employment to continue, for example, or something like that. So and they don't have to be employed by anyone in particular to rent there.
Through your worship, I understand that the owner is wanting to have some of the units for their staff housing, but not all of their staff will require every unit, so other units would be for other housing for locals within the community as long-term rentals.
Go ahead, Councilor Orlando.
Oh, sorry. I think the mic was cutting out there. Apologies. And just for clarity, for the staff housing component in that question through the chair, that would be a tenancy type agreement, or would that be something different? So the staff housing would have a tenancy based rental. So if they were to, for example, change employers, they would still be allowed to reside there.
Through your worship, yeah, they'd still be protected under tenancy, residential tenancy branch. But then also for the CMHC funding, there'd be parameters that city staff weren't part of that aspect that they would have to meet for getting that funding for the housing. But yeah, they'd be protected under the residential tenancy branch.
Your worship, thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? So with this, as we move forward, I'm supportive of all this. Staff have done their due diligence, especially with even the accessible parking spaces. However, comments made by Councilor Lusow regarding charging for electric bicycles, that sort of thing. I'm sure that the developer can take that under advisement and make sure that there's ample there for the community. So it just would be plugs outside for people to plug in. Any other comments or questions before I call the question? Councilor Orlando.
Well, Your Worship, to follow up on Councillor Lucio's comment, and I may not be understanding, the comment specifically was to not support the variance on accessible parking spaces, and I can't recall what the numbers. I believe it's a reduction of 2 from what would be required, and in the staff report there are some options presented at the end. So if that is something someone would like to put forward, I am just requesting direction from staff as to how to achieve that. And from my perspective, I'm sorry, I'm not a technician on understanding the details of these things, but it seems like something that would be fairly easy to achieve, in that accessible parking spaces are just slightly bigger or a little bit bigger than other ones and have other requirements. So I'm just wondering how we get there.
Okay, Ms. Hartland, comment?
Through your worship to both councillors, if there is a concern about the accessible parking, that is something that council can make a resolution for an amended resolution for the permit with a condition. Staff will note that the requirement for accessible parking in the zoning, we do have it in the zoning bylaw. It typically is a building code requirement of all buildings to have accessible parking. However, the BC building code hasn't been updated for quite some time with that. And it's 1 accessible parking space per 100 parking spaces, where the Alberta BC building code is would require 4 in this instance, and then every 100 spaces another one. So they had originally proposed 2 accessible parking spaces when going to the Advisory Planning Commission. They recommended to increase it, so the applicant did increase it to the 4, which would be higher than BC building code but meet Alberta code. And staff are relooking at the parking requirements to see what is needed with how many units are in a building for accessible stalls, and would be talking to the building officials with that. With that said though, if council does want to change the proposal, you could have the resolution that the variances are issued with the precondition to issuance that 2 mobility accessible stalls are added to the plans.
Councilor Lucial, I'll go back to you. How do you feel?
I think that would be okay. I'm just looking at the report. Can we ask for 4 additional spots? Because I thought their reduction was from 8 accessible spots down to 4.
It's 1 space for every 10 spaces to a maximum of 8. 1 space to a maximum of 4 for every 10. So do you want to ask for 8?
Yeah,
Okay, do we want to amend that motion to ask for 8 spaces? So I'm going to ask first, Ms. Hartling, your comment, please.
Yeah, through your worship, if that's what council is looking at, it would be removing the requested variance for mobility stalls, because that's what they would just be meeting the bylaw then.
I'm sorry, again, they're just meeting the bylaw then?
Oh, so the regulation that they're varying is from 8 to 4. So if council is requiring them to go to 8, then it would you would be if you are supporting the other parking variances. I'm not sure if Mr. Simon has any recommendations for the actual resolution, but it would be that it
But there's no
wouldn't
reduction then?
it wouldn't be a reduction, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Simon, comment?
To your worship, if council's major concern is a reduction of mobility parking spaces and you would like to see 8 on there, you just need to strike section 1D from the staff recommendation.
Okay.
And then you should be accomplishing what council wants to see. You approve the variance for the parking reduction,
Right.
as well as the parking reduction for visitor parking. And then you'd be approving the development permits after. The development permit drawings would need to be amended to reflect that upon issuance.
Okay, you understand that? Go ahead, Councilor Sherry.
Prior to anybody putting that on the table, I just want to make a comment, if that's okay, to council. I think we're getting hung up on the number of accessible parking spaces, but we haven't quite looked at the design. For example, where they put them is going to matter more. I think, as somebody who's frequently injured in the winter and sometimes gets to use these spots, if they're nowhere near my unit, I'm not going to use them. I'm going to park in front of my unit. I'm not going to park farther away because the spot's slightly wider. Just something to consider before making any changes.
Okay. So going back to that, so that we can actually vote on this, are you okay with leaving them at 4 then, hearing Councilor Cherry's comment, or do you feel you need to have 8?
I would still look for 8.
Okay, and so who was the mover and the seconder, or do we just strike this? So corporate officer,
Your worship, I would like to see an amending motion,
okay?
vote on that, and then vote on the original motion as
Okay.
amended, please.
So we're going to put a motion on the table, Councilor Lucia, that we're going to amend this to have 8 parking spaces instead of 4. Are you okay making that move?
Yes, I would look to make an amendment to increase the requirement for mobility challenged parking spaces from 4 spaces to 8 spaces for this development.
Okay, someone else want to second that motion? Councilor Staples. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll vote. I'm supportive of the 4 that was originally in the motion, but I'll call a question. So you're voting on changing this to 8 spaces. All those in favor? So now we have Councilor Orlando, Councilor Staples, Councilor Luciao in favor. Those opposed? So you got Sauls, Devlin, and Cherry opposed. This motion is defeated. Is that correct?
That's correct, your worship.
All right, so that motion's defeated. Going back to the original motion that's on the table, which is A, required off-street parking, reducing that down, and then B, the parking spaces to 4. Any other comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councilor Luciao, Councilor Stapenhurst are opposed. Balance of council is in favor. This motion is passed. Thank you. Moving on to item number C2. Someone want to make that motion for me, please? Councilor Luciao.
Ooh, development permit be issued at 1740 Bend Road for section 34, township 23, range 2. For form and character, 4 stacked row house buildings with site landscaping and parking.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Terry. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Item number 3, someone want to put that on Councilor Luciao?
Sure. I move that the owner provide security for the due and proper completion of landscaping in the amount of 125% of the amount identified in the cost estimate to the city of Revelstoke in the form of cash or unconditional irrevocable auto renewing letter of credit issued by a Canadian Chartered Bank or credit union prior to issuance of a building permit.
Second for that motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. All right, moving on to announcements from the mayor. I just want to say that we had a successful BioHeat Summit. Want to thank Mr. Parliament and his associates for putting that together. It was great to see so many people participate and professionals give us the benefit of their input. Anything that you would like to speak to on that, Mr. Parliament?
Just a shout out to, thank you, Mr. Mayor, just a shout out to our wonderful staff, Jay Morrison handling IT, Janet, Michelle handling logistics, and our co-sponsor, Rob from Canadian Energy Association, and a shout out to our sponsors, which is Tourism Revelstoke, BioHeat BC Network, and Peak Renewables, which made this summit possible. And yeah, thank you to all those that were involved.
Great, all right, thank you. Okay, moving on to recommendations from committee of the whole, fees and charges update. Any comments regarding the fees and charges update? Ms. Moore?
Yes, please, your worship. So on October 12th, council decided not to have this discussion because the meeting was so long. So we're bringing it forward now with the track change schedules. I don't know if you want to go into depth with them, but most of the management team is available to answer any questions.
Okay, any comments from council regarding these track changes? I've gone through, I think staff have done a great job of bringing up some of the fees, or all of the fees, but some of them are just going up a small percentage, some are a little higher, kind of trying to get us to the point where it's cost recovery. And I think it's prudent, but I'm willing to hear from council as to what they feel, or if they have any points that they want to discuss with staff.
So, your worship, there's something I'm looking for that I have an issue with.
Okay,
Don't seem to see in my notes.
any particular?
I think it was impound fees.
Okay,
What, do you know,
it's gonna be under
That was-
section J.
Pet impound or vehicle impound?
vehicle?
Yeah, that would be, I think it's M.
Vehicle impound fee, $166, up from $161. Stored the vehicle per day, $23. Comments, is that what you're?
Yeah, I think it was the storage. I was curious, through the.
Yep.
Your worship, what, like, communities around us are charging? As someone who's had their vehicle impounded, it was in a different community, was extensively more.
Yes, if they go to a tow company, it's gonna be significantly more. But when we're doing winter removal, we have to take possession of them on our property. Is that correct, Ms. Wood?
No, your worship, that's not correct. So
Okay.
if the vehicle is not licensed, we typically get it towed to our impound lot.
Okay,
If it is licensed, then it goes to the tow lot and the city kind of is out of it.
gotcha.
I'm not sure if it was the bylaw department or if it was the operations manager that suggested these increases.
Any comments, Mr. Gibb?
Yeah, I believe this was the 3% for inflation increase that was applied to this one. As just what it stated, most vehicles, when they're for our snow removal, that type of situation, would be towed to a tow company's impound yard, so these fees would be charged by us. This is mainly in situations where you have an abandoned vehicle or, as previously stated, when your vehicle is unlicensed.
All right. Any comments, Mr. Gibb?
Any comments?
Okay, moving on to And then what are the chances with us getting paid even at this low rate if it's an abandoned vehicle? So I mean,
To speak to that, historically, it can be challenging, vehicles obviously to get abandoned. For the most part, it's only when vehicles are actually licensed that people tend to, licensed and in good condition that they tend to want them back. So for the most part, if a vehicle ends up in our impound yard, we do hold it for the required period of time, and then we will be sending notification to the owner. And then after a certain amount of time has elapsed, then we would be permitted to then take it to auction to recover costs.
okay, thank you for that explanation. Any further comments? Councilor Orlando.
Your worship, through the chair, I would just request that staff provide a quick overview of the new fees from Schedule B, C, J, and M. It mentions there are new fees, and if we could explain just why. Also, there's some deleted fees mentioned there, so I'm just seeking a quick verbal update.
Okay. So with development services, Mr. Simon, you want to just quickly go over that?
Through your worship to Councillor Orlando. So with respect to Schedule B, and I'll let Mr. Gibbs go into Schedule C for the building services. But for Schedule B, development services, the three new fees are comprehensive development plan, phase development agreement, and floodplain exemption. So comprehensive development plan, council will note when you recently adopted the new development approval procedures bylaw. That is a more comprehensive plan that we can ask for a significant development, which takes substantial staff time across multiple departments to review. So we needed to ensure we have a fee. So that should someone apply for a comprehensive development plan, we can charge them accordingly. Phase development agreement, again, same story. This has always been a tool that the city could use, but we never had a fee for it in our fees and charges bylaw. So very important that we have a fee in there so that staff aren't working without having appropriate cost recovery. And then a floodplain exemption fee, again, same thing. It's always an application that someone was able to submit, but the city never had a fee included in the bylaw for it. So very important that we get these fees included to ensure we are doing appropriate cost recovery. And one of the deleted fees was the concurrent zoning bylaw and official community plan bylaw amendment application. Previously, there was an ability to have a reduced fee if you were doing both applications concurrently. Upon further review from staff, it still takes substantial staff time, as well as in addition, when we adopted a new official community plan back in July 2022, we shouldn't be seeing substantial changes to it. And if there are changes, again, further staff time that needs to be reviewed. So we thought it was prudent to separate those fees once again to ensure we had appropriate cost recovery for the staff time that it takes to complete the review of those applications.
Okay, further comment, Councilor Orlando on section B.
Your worship, no, thank you staff for the quick review.
Okay, let's go to section C.
Through chair there, so the section, Schedule C there was amended, the building permit fees were broken down based on type of structures. And so that is being done to reflect the different levels of work that are required based on the type of structures they are. We've broken down to single families and then typical smaller dwellings that would be associated with a single family, so single family, two dwelling, and ancillary buildings and agricultural buildings. And then the multifamilies and row homes, and then separate from that would be larger apartment buildings, commercial, industrial, institutional. And again, that's done based on a reflection of the amount of staff resources that would go into each type of those files. It obviously gets more intensive as you go up in the size of structure. And then the remaining were all updated based on inflation.
Okay. Comment on that, Councilor Orlando, you were asking?
No, your worship, no, I do appreciate the quick review.
Okay. Let's move to J, which is basically animals, dog pound.
Yeah, I can speak to that as well. So we have a hen coop licensing process. So essentially, if somebody would like to have hens in their yard, they would get it, they would apply for their permit. Our bylaw officers would then go out and determine if the structure meets the requirements of the bylaw. And so currently, the way the fees are structured is the license itself is $50 for the license, or $100 if done after the fact. However, there is no fee for the inspection, so currently all the staff resources that would go into it between the processing of permit and the issuance of the permit as well as the inspection, we wouldn't be running the cost recovery on that process, so that is why we've added an inspection fee, which is consistent with the other bylaws as well.
All right, thank you for that. And section M. And so section M, we're going back to traffic and highways. So any comments, anyone want to talk about that, or what we've already basically gone over with towing the vehicles and that sort of thing, pretty much covered?
So your worship, the only additional fee is a permit for use of designated snow disposal. I'm not sure if Mr. Black can speak to that.
That is for private users to utilize city property for dumping snow in the winter. It's a cost recovery because every spring we have to clean up the debris that's associated with hauling snow to those locations.
So I want to get this right. So if we get those people and push it out into the street, we can charge them $500 and then put it back, is that what?
Through your worship and to all of council, it is for private snow operators who are utilizing city property to haul snow to that designated location to recover the cost to clean up in the stream.
That's what I thought you meant. I was going on, this is a cool fee. Councillor Stapenhurst, do you have a question?
A comment for Schedule D, and if it's not the right time, I can hold back until.
Well, let's make the comment.
Okay, so my question is in regards to Schedule D and essentially the false alarms. I believe it's increased from 270 to 280. Of course, my computer is not opening the link right now. But that just seems, and it seems to be after the third false alarm. And I'm just wondering if that's an accurate cost recovery for the fire service rescue, or if it could be higher.
Comment on that, Chief DeRose.
Through your worship, the third and successive false fire alarms, they're not a cost recovery at all. They're intended to be a deterrent to operators of public buildings and alarm operators who fail to keep their alarm systems in good operating conditions. So that's what that's there is for.
Okay, appreciate that. Comment on follow up on that, Councillor Stevens.
Do we want to look at increasing that fee so it is more of a cost recovery? Especially as we have more buildings being built with automatic fire alarms?
How many, can you give us an estimate of how many false alarms we do a month, Chief?
Your worship, very few. It is surprising. I think we've issued one so far this year for a third consecutive false alarm. We do respond to quite a number of alarms that do turn out to be false, but the key here is that it's a negligent charge back, just to encourage them to keep that alarm system operating. I think there might be one or more. It's typically this time of year, the third or fourth quarter, that we start to see some of these alarms be coming into that third. But generally speaking, they are repaired right away. We don't charge for things like alarms that are caused by cooking or showering or things like that, because it's not a negligence thing, it's an accidental activation. So it's very few.
Some of it, that's how we time our roast. Apologies. All right, so if there's no need to change that, you're comfortable with leaving that because it's a deterrent, Council?
It's at the fire chief's discretion. I just thought I'd open up the conversation. Thank you, your worship.
You're okay with that, Chief? Yep, okay, good. All right, any comments, further comment on fees and charges? And then I will ask Ms. Floyd, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if we could get a recommendation to prepare a bylaw based on these schedules for first, second, and third reading for the long-term financial plan, that would be great.
Okay, Councillor Cherry.
I will do that. Do you need to say that out?
No.
No. This is your second. Councillor Orlando, did you want to second that motion or make comment?
Make comments, so and I'm happy to second it and make comment. I prefer if someone else did, but yeah.
Okay, Councillor Devlin's going to second it. You can now make comment, Councillor.
Yeah, Your Worship. My feeling is to remove the hen coop inspection fee in addition to the license fee. I feel it's going to drive it the cost, the initial upfront costs, too high. And it's going to reduce compliance, which contributes to other issues. And, long story short, people who are feeling the pinch of the economic times or have a personal interest in food security issues or health and diet related things take this the ability to have hens in their backyard pretty personally, and it's close to their heart. And I think the existing two fees that are already there were in part intended to recover this inspection fee in itself. So I just think it would just drive it up to the edge. And, while I do appreciate people's comments about cost and staff's comments about cost recovery, long story short, there never is true cost recovery. You can strive towards it. But in everything, you're guesstimating and estimating how much it will be. I would just prefer to have more people complying with it because it is affordable for them to provide for the families. Thank you very much.
Your Worship.
Go ahead.
If Councillor Orlando would like to amend what's on the table, I'd second it.
Okay, so Councillor Orlando, do you want to make that amendment on that fee?
Yeah, my proposed amendment would be to not include the Schedule J hen coop inspection fee, and leave the two existing fees as is.
Okay. Do you want to second that, Councillor Cherry?
I do.
Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to call a question on the amendment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All those in favor of this amendment? Opposed? No, that's passed unanimously. Now we're going to vote on putting this to council as in there.
As amended.
As amended, pardon me. Okay, all those in favor of the fees and charges as amended? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Floyd. Thank you, staff, for working on the charges and getting this to council. All right, we're going to go on to item 9A. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me? Councillor Cherry. Real short one.
I move that permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2368 be adopted.
Second for the motion. Councillor Lucia. Okay, any discussion on that tax exemption bylaw? Saying none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. All right, going on to 11A staff reports, development permit 2023-003. Is there a presentation with this staff report? Ms. Hartley.
Your Worship, there's no presentation, but I can bring up the permit or any of the attached images and plans if council wishes to review anything. The proposal is for the forming character of a renovation to an existing building and site with landscaping. And the proposal that is going into this building is a veterinary clinic. There is a condition that staff have recommended on the permit, and it's for the removal and re-landscaping of the second access abutting the property, as only one access is needed, and the neighboring property that has a different development proposal is to prove out their own access. So that is one added condition that staff have on the permit if council has any questions.
Okay. Any questions from council? Councilor Lucia.
Thank you, Marshall. I just have a question when we get down to the second motion. If we're asking for them to change the landscaping, then won't the quote that we have need to be updated before we approve that second motion?
Ms. Hartling, follow-up or response?
Yeah, through to Counselor, the estimate has to be updated as part of that landscaping. So the landscaping plan and the quote together have to be updated. And then it's 125% of the provided landscape estimate as per the updated landscape plans.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Councillor Stapleton.
Yeah, overall, I'm in favor of this. I had one question in regards to the traffic on Victoria Avenue, if I'm not mistaken, and whether or not we were considering putting in something to prevent anybody from turning left out of that lot. I know it's a zone, I think it's already a bylaw, but I don't know if it's enforced.
Well, it comes down to a police enforcement if it is, but I'll go to staff regarding that. So any comment on left-hand turn as you leave the property, Ms. Hartling, or should I be going to Mr. Black?
Through your worship, one of those issues was addressed by closing off that second access, as there's a separate proposal there to prove out their traffic impact assessment that's separate from this application, and there are considerations that they have to do to the roadway there. For this subject application, I'll defer my comments to Mr. Black if there's any concerns, but we've received no concerns from fire and engineering with having just the one access, but I'm not too sure on that left-hand turn for this specific development, if that's an issue or not.
Comment, Mr. Blunt.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to council. The traffic volumes with a business of this nature is very, very low. And so we don't anticipate seeing any issues with this sort of business at this location.
You okay with that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? Let's get this motion on the table. Councillor Devlin.
Move that development permit be approved at 1403 Victoria Road West for the form and character of exterior renovations to an existing building with site improvements, subject to the following precondition to issuance being met. A, the owner applicant shall submit updated plans to align with the submitted engineering plans by removing the second access to Victoria Street from the west side of the subject property. No, that's that. That's it.
Okay, second for the motion, Councillor Cherry. Do you want to make comment or are you going to second?
I'll second.
Okay. Councillor Lucian, did you want to make comment? Okay, good. Everybody wants to second it. Any comments on the motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimous. Item number 2. Councillor
Move that the owner provide security for the due and proper completion of landscaping in the amount of 125% of the amount identified in the cost estimate to the city of Revelstoke in the form of cash or an unconditional, irrevocable, auto-renewing letter of credit issued by a Canadian chartered bank or credit union prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lucian. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to item 11B. Parks and Rec janitorial service contract. Someone want to put the motion on the table, please? Okay, Councillor Lucian.
I move that a janitorial service contract with Community and Aquatic Center for a 3-year term, January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2026, be awarded to Apex Janitorial Services Limited for the following amounts. Year 1, $126,000. Year 2, $127,890. Year 3, $129,808.35, excluding GST.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Mr. Nato, do you want to give us any input?
Through your worship, no, I think it's a pretty basic contract. Apex has been the provider for the last 3 years, and we've received good value and service for their contracts. So we are happy to award again.
Great, thank you for that. Any comments from council? Saying none, all those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to BC Active Transportation Grant application. Mr. Black, do you have any presentation before I put this on the table?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to introduce our engineer, Emily Lindsay, who will be doing your presentation today.
Great, thanks, Emily. It's underneath the center console in the big
yep.
TV.
Be gentle, please.
Are you asking me to be gentle with Emily or for the table here?
Sensitive.
Yes.
You're up and running. thanks,
Okay, so we are looking for support from council today to apply for the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant for the Nickel Road multi-use pathway, the second phase of it. I'll give you a little bit of background on the grant, overview of the project and the multi-use pathway intent. So the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant needs to be submitted by October 27th, which I believe is Thursday. It has a little bit of a sliding scale of how much funding can be allocated depending on population size and type of community. Revelstoke falls into the population less than 15,000, so they will provide the less of up to 70% of the project funding or 500,000, whichever of those two values is smaller. So to give you an overview, you can see on the image in front of you, we have got Airport Way on the west side of the image, and we've got Nickel Road on the south side. Currently, we have an existing multi-use pathway along Airport Way that was finished a couple of years ago. And then we have phase 1 of the Nickel Road multi-use pathway that exists from Park Drive up to the roundabout that is out front of Mackenzie Village. So phase 2 section is the section that is in red here, and it goes from Airport Way to Park Drive. It's 460 meters of multi-use pathway, and that will connect into the Airport Way and the existing Nickel Road multi-use paths that are there. This grant is an important part of this multi-use path as it does connect to existing sections, so it provides quite a crucial missing link between what is already there and larger picture. It helps provide a connection that will run from downtown Revelstoke all the way up to Revelstoke Mountain Resort in time, and that larger network Mr. Simon alluded to earlier in one of his presentations, but that's been developed in conjunction with Revelstoke Mountain Resort and Little Shoe Spot, the Lake Band. So the multi-use path, this is a picture of the existing Airport Way, will be a very similar design to this. It's a 3-meter wide pathway. It has a drainage swale that will run adjacent, and that separates it from the roadway. This is Airport Way, but in that case, it'll be Nickel Road. There will be crosswalks and driveway crossings that are incorporated, as well as lighting, and you can see this removable bollard. Those will also be in place. Just to show you in plan view, you've got the pedestrian crossing that connects Airport Way and Nickel Road sections of multi-use path. In grey here is the 3-meter wide pathway, and in green is this drainage swale that is separating the pathway from the road. Fundings. We have got a estimated cost from Jake J and Lawson Engineering have provided that, and we have it estimated about $910,000. 70% of those project costs would be $635,000, and so therefore the maximum amount we would achieve from the grant would be the $500,000, as that is the lesser of those two amounts. So in terms of city contribution, we'd be looking at about $410,000, just under. There is funding in, you'll have to excuse me, I've forgotten the name of the funding stream, but there is about $800,000 for multi-use pathway in the 2024 funding, and I believe we've used about $300,000 of that to date. So there is some availability there.
Wonderful.
And just a comment on that $910,000, that includes construction cost, engineering fees, and about a 20% contingency. That is that number is based on the level of design we have at this point in time. And then just to tie this back into our transportation master plan, I just pulled up the 5 vision and goals we have from the transportation master plan going forward, and The multi-use pathway really does tie into all of these, providing a comprehensive bicycle network connecting key destinations being downtown and RMR. We're getting more efficient use of our roads by having a separated road and a separated pedestrian bike access network. Having these pieces in play is going to encourage more people to get out there all year round, especially having a multi-use path being separated like this allows us to provide year-round maintenance with snow removal. There is an existing bus stop along this length of multi-use path, which will be relocated and provided still along that section. And then we're just improving safety for vulnerable users as we are slightly narrowing that road width there by having those two bits in play, which encourages people to drive slower, but also provides protected infrastructure for people using the multi-use path.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just because I'm familiar with the stream, it's the RMI funding. There's about,
Yes,
I think there was
thank you.
850,000 that was originally set. We've used about 300. And because of that, there is actually no tax implications, I believe, for the install of this.
Ms. Moore, comment on that?
Through your worship and to the rest of council, Councillor Cherry is correct. The other funding source from the city contribution is RMI funds, and the total allocated was 850,000. We've spent about $300,000 to date within the 3-year strategy.
Okay. All right, Councillor Stakenhurst.
I just wanted to echo what Jillian said. Great job on your presentation today.
I thought it was outstanding.
I also wanted to just ask a quick question in regards to the drainage swath or the center green piece. Is there any future possibilities of future landscaping along those the barriers that separate the sidewalk from the roadways, trees and whatnot?
If your worship and council, we've on the Airport Way multi-use path, we planted wildflowers. So the goal here is to create a landscape buffer that does not need regular maintenance and provide something that is more of a beautification that represents the goals that I think the resort community represents. And so we'll be following that same trend on this project.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, Councillor Lisa.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just am very much in support of trying to access grant money for any kind of multi-use path that we can build. Just a question, is there a sidewalk on the other side of Nickel that's removed from the road?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
So we've had other discussions about developments and whether it should be the cost of the municipality or the developer to develop these multi-use pathways. If we already have a separated sidewalk that runs from where the MUP ends on Airport Way all the way to Arrow Heights School, where we've now installed a crosswalk to get over to the MUP. We've had discussions with RMR about them wanting to develop the lower bench. Should this really be on the taxpayers to pay for a MUP to go up the side of their property to connect those two when there is already a sidewalk on the other side of the street?
This is not their property.
Yeah.
Where this MUP's going is not their property. It's a private individual that owns that property. The bench that they are going is inside of that property and towards Shield Road. So this property along here is not theirs.
Okay.
Mr. Black, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. And the resort has been working closely with staff as far as that future development, the 10 acres that they own to the south of the property adjacent to Nickel. And they are proposing and looking to build a MUP that would continue on Airport Road towards Shield Road from Nickel as part of that development project in the future. So we're already building that network for the community to continue and expand the multi-use path system with the hope eventually of getting to Williamson on Airport and then through the resort up to from Williamson up to the resort. So we'll have a continuous loop of multi-use path for the public to utilize in the long term.
Thank you. Yeah, when we talk about MUPs, there's other locations in town that we could be using this grant money to build those, and building a MUP on the other side of the street from where there is a removed sidewalk from the road seems like it's an unnecessary step for us to be taking at this point.
All right, well, I appreciate that comment. Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship, through the chair, just sort of a question for the presenter. And I realize this is, the question before us is making a funding application. However, just looking at the design documents specifically, part of the slide I was looking at is blocked out just because it's one of the boxes goes off the presentation screen. But anyways, my sort of statement / question is very simple. In my position, basically residents want things to work, and one of the concerns I have in just looking at the design there is that it seems to funnel into a bike pathway into a crosswalk, a pedestrian walking crosswalk. That's a very busy intersection, especially in wintertime, all year round in summertime as well, with a lot of people accessing that intersection who are doing it for the first time if they're visitors to town. And I guess my statement is just basically, I don't think we can rely on users of the road, whether they be drivers or cyclists, to 100% understand right away and who's got the right of way and what I should do and whether I should get on and off my bike. So my question, although it might be inappropriate at this juncture, is basically, is this going to be really clear to everyone so people understand what's going on, so it's not a point of friction and potential danger due to people not really understanding who ought to be doing what? Is the signage going to be clear? And I would note, another crosswalk in Southside, I feel that is relatively new, suffers from the same issue. So I just don't want it to happen again. So I was just hoping I could get some comments on that. Thanks.
Comments, Ms. Lindsay or Mr. Black? Mr. Black?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have designed this project with the guidance of professional engineers. This is their liability, and so we trust that the work and design that has been presented to us for approval and for funding in this project has been designed appropriately to minimize risk to the city and to the users. Of course, users are users. We will do the very best that we can with the design, and if changes need to be dealt with in the future, that is something that we will work on as we see operational issues occur. Unfortunately, we can't foresee the future and to anticipate every potential implication or risk to the city, but we do our very best, and that's why we utilize professional engineers for these design services.
Okay. Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to say that I am wildly supportive of this, and I look forward to you trying to make that timeline. I do have an engineering question, though, about right-of-ways, just because we're on this. Through the chair to Director Black, if you know off the top of your head, what services are in this right of way and could be impacted by a potential development on that 5 acre that's currently for sale right there?
The only thing that's in the ground on that side of the road is the brand new Fortis line that was placed underneath the recently completed MUP from Park up to the roundabout. And so we've already anticipated that, and Fortis has worked with us in completing the phase 1 of that MUP. And so we're aware of that, and there should be no other issues. Undergrounding of electrical wire for the streetlights will be also part of that. And so those are the only utilities that are in the way. And lastly, as part of that subdivision that is for that property that is available on the market currently, there is a right of way for a future road access. The name of the road that's between Nickel and Park, I don't recall now, but it's halfway. So there is a future right of way that will go through there to provide additional access. And so we'll have a curb return there in a future road intersection at that location. That's the only thing that's not shown on this drawing is that was not, that dedication of land was not available at the time we designed the project.
Perfect. And just to follow up, any changes that are crossings on this, if we build this, when we build this, it'll be developer, it'll be the developer paid.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, somebody want to put this motion? Thank you, Councillor Gilmore.
I move that an application for funding to be used towards constructing the section of the multi-use pathway from Park Drive to Airport Way under the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program be endorsed and submitted by October 25th, 2023.
Second for the motion, Councillor Stapleton. Any further discussion on this motion, Councillor Devlin?
Just through the chair to Councillor Lucio, just as a maybe gentle reminder here, that the question before us is whether or not we would be supporting a grant application. It's not necessarily whether we would be supporting the building of the MUP in itself. That's more of a budget question from the city point of view. However, supporting a grant application would be allowing that option to be on the table, whereas if we don't support a grant application, then the grant application doesn't get made. We don't have the option then to put $500,000 towards this if we decide we want to do it. If then later it needs to be built for some reason, we're out of grant. So I would just as a sort of reminder there, this is kind of sideways to the conversation of whether or not we want to support the actual building of the thing. This is more of a, do we support the options we pay for a good chunk of it if we decide to build it? That's just a comment.
Great. All right, any further discussion on the motion on the table?
Just for clarification, I got submitted on the October 25th on mine. Tomorrow? I think you mentioned the 26th in your.
The 27th is the cutoff for the grant. I think the 25th was maybe put there for resolution.
Yes,
Okay.
that's my understanding.
All right.
Just want to ensure.
Yeah, we have everything ready to go.
Perfect.
This is the final item.
All right, any further comments? Saying none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Lindsay, appreciate that. All right, moving on to item 11D, Reddit funding application. Ms. Braun, do you have a bit of a presentation?
I do not, Your Worship. I just have the report in front of you. This is the same application or the same program we submitted an application to back in January of 2023 to obtain $500,000 in funds to support development of employment lands, specifically housing, Oscar Street area master planning. We also, as you've noted in my report, allocated $100,000 to the Housing Society for capacity building and another $100,000 to the CSRD for the extension of the city's water main to serve the regional airport. So we are submitting another application under the same program for another $500,000. And that is a collaborative effort being worked on by myself, Director Black, Evan, and finance input. So we're looking at $100,000 still required by the planning department and engineering department to complete the land servicing for the additional lots in the Oscar Street lands, and another $400,000 to support clean growth opportunities and infrastructure development related to RCEC. And I will let Evan jump in here because he's really the force behind this with the BioHeat Summit that was recently held, which I was not at. So Evan, you kind of outlined some of these key activities we would pursue under the funding. Do you want to take any questions or have anything to add?
Thank you, Ingrid, through the mayor. So what we're trying to do, of course, as stated by the director, is to apply for funding that will assist our utility that does rely on the forestry sector. We all know the challenges before RCEC. One of the reasons for the summit was to educate and stimulate some ideas on how to make it better and offer solutions to biomass energy in general and specific to our facility. So it aligns with the summit, it aligns with this application, and we're trying to earmark $400,000. So once again, commend CED for aggressively pursuing this grant. And tomorrow we'll be putting the final touches on it. So this is before council for your endorsement as we move forward to not only finish the application, but hopefully direct some much needed capital funding and operational support to our own municipal utility through RCEC.
All right. can I get somebody to put this motion on the table, Councillor Cherry?
I move that a grant application for the second intake of the Rural Economic Diversification Infrastructure Program be endorsed for submission through the Forest Impact Transition Stream.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to correspondence. We all have a letter in your package. Provincial park request. This is a letter that I alluded to, I think last meeting, that we get it to you, definitely regarding the Jordan area for a park. And I think I've recently received another letter for that. That will be going into your reading package. So any comments on that letter at this point? Councillor Stephen?
I just fully support what's outlined in the letter.
Great. All right. Appreciate that comment. And that letter's gone to provincial and federal government too. So moving on to communications strategic priorities chart. Mr. Parliament, comment on that?
Yes, quickly, Mr. Mayor, some items can come off. So most notable, we're taking the pump track design and budget off. That's been completed. We're taking the BioHeat Summit, both references under the CAO operational strategies off. In addition, I'm adding some anticipated tours of other facilities, multi-purpose facilities that have been built in both the province of Alberta and BC. This will be over the next 6 to 8 months, but we're actually going to schedule some visits. We're going to go talk to not only the local government that built these facilities and the partnering and the financial models they adopted, but also see some of the construction that's being done and talk about escalation of costs, etc. So I'm going to be adding that to mine. Also, we're going to be taking off the posting of the communication manager position under corporate services. That's been done. In fact, we have some news to share. So with that, I'll turn that over to Cindy.
Thank you, Mr. Parliament. So yeah, we're just super happy to announce that we've hired Francesca Williams. She's coming to us from Fairmont. Her start date will be mid-November, and we can all stay tuned for a media release coming in this recent or soon.
Great. Thanks,
Yeah, in
Ms.
the
Floyd.
future.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Well, I'd like to communicate how happy I am.
Yes, a shout out to the committee that worked very hard by reducing it to 3 candidates down to 2 candidates, and that was done in the last couple of weeks. So November 14th, we have a new communications manager person coming to Revelstoke.
Awesome. Great. Moving on to, is that it?
That's it.
Mr. Palmer, thank you. Moving on to APC, Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was actually attending the UBCM, and although I did try my best to attend remotely, I just had earplugs in. I did ask Councillor Devlin to step in for me, and I was hoping if he'd like to give us a bit of an update.
Sure.
Most of this has already come before us, actually, so there's not, I think actually all of this has already come before us, actually, by this point. We got a couple of these today. So we talked about mostly form and character, which as Councillor Cherry knows is what I love to talk about the most, and that's why he asked me to do this. That was about it, other than the Mackenzie Village commercial conversation that is still ongoing, that hasn't, there was a small amount of discussion around that, particularly a little bit of disagreement on the APC, that they did balance in favor of it, and that is about all there really is to update on that, is all of the rest of this is already in pass.
All right, great. And then going into Budget Finance Committee, so October 4th, we talked about several different items regarding that and reserve level balances, operating spending initiatives, capital spending initiatives, and a lot of the capital projects. And then on the 11th, we went on to discuss even more reserve level balances and capital spending initiatives. Any comments from any members of council regarding either of those Budget Finance Committee meetings? Councillor Devlin.
Just a general note, and I think it's been said many times before in those meetings, it's really nice to see how hard finance and everybody else has worked to give us a little bit more handholding this year around, as we kind of got a new council thrust into the budget almost right away when we were elected, and there's a lot there, and it's nice to see that finance is giving us a little bit more time to deal with it. So thank you, Shanna, and everybody else who has worked on that. That's all.
Great. All right, Ms. Rousseau, Ms. Moore, do you have any comments?
Through your worship, no, I was just turning on my camera to kind of give the thumbs up and thank you to Councillor Devlin for acknowledging that. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving on to questions from the press. Ms. Rousseau, any questions?
No questions from the press, your worship.
All right, council, I'd like to have someone make a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 90.18 of the community charter, moved by Councillor Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Devlin. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a short break and then come back in camera. Thank you all.